These are the dumbest Scooby Doo episodes ever made, starting with a vampire who's having an existential crisis. In Season 1, Episode 11, The Secret Serum, we get what critics universally agree is the absolute worst episode in all of Mystery Incorporated. And trust me, that's saying something. This episode centers around a vampire terrorizing Crystal Cove. But here's the kicker. He's not after blood. He's stealing random junk to make an anti-aging potion. The whole plot revolves around some elderly woman who read a magazine recipe for a youth serum and actually thought it was real. Plot twist. It was literally a prank article. So we've got a vampire helping an old lady follow beauty tips from what was basically the 1970s version of a clickbait article. The mystery is painfully obvious from the start, and Fred acts like a complete jerk to everyone for no reason. Even the show's biggest fans pretend this episode doesn't exist. But if you think a vampire with age anxiety is stupid, wait until you see two giant monsters having relationship counseling. In Season 1, Episode 9, Battle of the Humungonauts, the writers decided to parallel giant kaiju destroying Crystal Cove with Shaggy, Velma, and Scooby having relationship drama. Because nothing says quality mystery solving like using city-destroying monsters as a metaphor for your love triangle problems. The actual mystery becomes completely secondary to watching Scooby get jealous of Velma dating Shaggy. Multiple ranking systems rate this as the absolute worst episode of the series. The premise abandons everything that makes Scooby-Doo mysteries work. Instead of supernatural intrigue, we get giant creatures punching each other while the gang argues about feelings. It's like someone mixed Godzilla with a soap opera and forgot to include an actual mystery worth solving. At least those monsters weren't as obvious as our next disaster. In Season 1, Episode 2, The Creeping Creatures, we visit the nearly abandoned town of Gatorsburg. Here's where things get hilariously stupid. The town has exactly 3 residents, and wouldn't you know it, there are exactly 3 alligator monsters terrorizing the place. I wonder who the culprits could possibly be. The episode plays this mystery completely straight, as if the audience won't immediately figure out that the only 3 people in town are obviously the 3 gator creatures. Other episodes might acknowledge this kind of transparency with some self-aware humor, but not this one. They genuinely expect you to be surprised when the reveal happens. There's also this bizarre subplot involving a soccer ball with a face drawn on it like something out of Castaway, which somehow makes the whole thing even weirder. But at least those gator people had a reason for what they were doing, unlike our next Phantom Trucker. In Season 1, Episode 3, Secret of the Ghost Rig, we get a Phantom Trucker terrorizing Crystal Cove while doorknobs mysteriously disappear all over town. What do ghost truckers and missing doorknobs have in common? Absolutely nothing, and the episode never bothers to make this combination make sense. This early series episode suffers from serious pacing problems, and a plot so convoluted, it involves hidden diamonds and automotive supernatural elements that barely connect to each other. The show was still finding its voice in Season 1, but this episode particularly struggles with unclear villain motivations. By the end, you'll still be wondering why someone thought combining phantom trucking with doorknob theft was a coherent mystery concept. Speaking of incoherent, let's talk about a crab with very specific victim preferences. In Season 1, Episode 4, Revenge of the Man Crab, a giant crab creature terrorizes a beach volleyball tournament, and for some reason, it's specifically targeting female players. The episode introduces the memorable character Skipper Shelton and has decent monster design, but the overall execution feels incredibly routine and predictable. The mystery lacks any of the complexity you'd expect from Mystery Incorporated. Critics describe it as, not bad, just okay, which might sound like faint praise, but for a series known for exceeding expectations, that's actually pretty damning. The beach tournament setting provides adequate atmosphere, but the mystery resolution delivers 0 satisfying surprises. It's the kind of episode you forget you watched 5 minutes after it ends. But forgettable is better than whatever was happening with our next artistic disaster. In Season 2, Episode 6, Art of Darkness, an artist's painting literally comes to life and starts attacking museum patrons. The episode actually acknowledges how absurd this premise is, but instead of using that self-awareness to create something clever, it just doesn't do anything with it. The monster concept feels completely underdeveloped compared to the series' more memorable supernatural threats. Critics note that while the episode isn't actively terrible, it lacks any creative spark that would distinguish it from forgettable filler. The museum setting had atmospheric potential that goes completely untapped, and the art-themed mystery fails to explore any interesting cultural possibilities. When your villain is literally a painting, someone clearly ran out of ideas. Though a murderous painting is still more believable than a house that grows legs. In Season 2, Episode 2, The House of the Nightmare Witch, Velma and Hot Dog Water travel to Russia and somehow return with a house that grows legs and starts rampaging through Crystal Cove like some kind of architectural kaiju. Yes, you read that correctly. A walking house. This episode appears on multiple worst of lists, despite its bizarre creativity, or maybe because of it. The surreal premise creates logistical problems that the episode simply cannot address convincingly. How do you fight a house? Why does it have legs? How did they transport it from Russia? The episode represents an ambitious concept that completely exceeds the show's ability to provide any kind of believable supernatural explanation. International adventure elements could have provided interesting variety, but instead, it feels totally disconnected from the series' established tone. At least that house stayed on Earth, unlike our next episode's alien disappointment. In Season 2, Episode 16, Aliens Among Us, the episode explores alien mythology within the Crystal Cove universe, and somehow manages to make both aliens and Crystal Cove mythology incredibly boring. This is actually impressive in how badly it wastes potential. Critics describe the episode as underwhelming because it barely utilizes the alien concepts that could have significantly enhanced the show's supernatural elements. The only redeeming quality is Sheriff Stone's involvement, which demonstrates how even a strong supporting character can't salvage fundamentally weak material. The episode arrives late in Season 2 when fan expectations for mythology payoffs were at their highest, making its superficial treatment of alien themes particularly disappointing. But if aliens weren't weird enough for you, how about some cultural stereotypes disguised as mythology? In Season 1, Episode 18, The Dragon's Secret, a white wizard searches for 4 dragon rings while an exchange student competes for the same artifacts. The episode feels completely disconnected from the series' established mythology and tone, resembling what critics describe as a Chinese action film more than an actual Scooby-Doo mystery. The cultural elements feel superficial and stereotypical, rather than genuinely incorporating diverse mythological traditions into the show's universe. It's like someone watched exactly one kung fu movie and decided that qualified as cultural research. Critics consistently rank this among the worst Season 1 episodes, citing its confused narrative direction and weak integration with the overarching series plot. The whole thing feels like it belongs in a completely different show. Speaking of things that don't belong, meet the only kidnapper who says please and thank you. In Season 2, Episode 20, Stand and Deliver, the dandy highwayman is a polite English thief who kidnaps women throughout Crystal Cove, including Daphne and Mayor Nettles. Despite the initially unique villain concept of a courteous criminal, the episode's resolution completely undermines its potential. The ending features this incredibly awkward scene where male characters wear earplugs while female characters attempt to communicate, creating uncomfortable gender dynamics that feel dated and weird. Critics note that the episode's placement disrupts the season's building tension, arriving at the worst possible moment in the overarching narrative. The episode attempts some kind of social commentary but handles its themes so clumsily that it creates moments that are more uncomfortable than enlightening. But even polite kidnapping makes more sense than our next Puritan nightmare. In Season 2, Episode 9, Grim Judgment, a Puritan judge character named Hebediah Grimm targets young couples in Crystal Cove. The episode suffers from an immediately obvious villain reveal involving Gary and Ethan, 2 recurring football players who might as well be wearing signs that say, "We're the bad guys." The mystery completely lacks sophistication, with transparent misdirection attempts that fail to create any genuine suspense. While the episode includes some character development for Fred regarding his parents and features Velma delivering sharp commentary, these elements cannot salvage the fundamentally weak central mystery. It represents one of Season 2's absolute lowest points in terms of plot construction and mystery crafting. And finally, we reach the episode so universally hated that fans refuse to talk about it. In Season 2, Episode 14, The Heart of Evil, we get an episode that consistently appears on every single fan-generated worst episodes list across multiple platforms. But here's the weird thing. Nobody wants to explain exactly why it's so terrible. The episode generates widespread fan dissatisfaction, but the specific nature of its problems varies among different critical assessments. Its placement in Season 2 suggests it may have suffered from proximity to stronger episodes, making its weaknesses more apparent by comparison. What we do know is that it represents the series' biggest misstep in an otherwise acclaimed run, with universal disappointment that transcends typical fan disagreements about episode quality. These 12 episodes represent the occasional disasters in what was otherwise an incredible series. Common problems include villain reveals so obvious they're insulting, mystery construction so weak it falls apart under basic scrutiny, social commentary so clumsy it creates more problems than it solves, and premises so ambitious they completely exceed the show's narrative capabilities. Despite these individual failures, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated maintained exceptional overall quality throughout its 52-episode run, making these weaker installments notable primarily for their stark contrast with the series' typical excellence. If you want to see what Mystery Incorporated looked like when it actually got everything right, click the video on screen now.